What happens when the perfect life is built on a perfect lie? For Doris Vanderbilt, 8 months pregnant and sleeping soundly in her $50 million Manhattan penthouse, her world was flawless. Her husband, the brilliant tech millionaire Ethan Vanderbilt, was her rock, her partner, her everything. But while she dreamed of their future family, Ethan was across town committing the ultimate betrayal. He wasn't at a business dinner. He was throwing a lavish, secret birthday party for his mistress. He thought no one was watching. He thought his secrets were safe. He was wrong. Because someone was there in the shadows with a camera. And the footage they captured wouldn't just break a marriage, it would ignite a war. The city of New York glittered below the Vanderbilt penthouse like a carpet of scattered diamonds. From the 68th floor of 157, the view was a god's-eye panorama of power and ambition, a vista Ethan Vanderbilt considered his birthright. Tonight, the city's electric hum was a muted thrum behind the triple-paned, floor-to-ceiling glass. Inside, the only sound was the whisper-quiet climate control and the soft, rhythmic breathing of his wife Doris, asleep in their cavernous master suite. Ethan stood in the marble entryway, adjusting the knot of his Tom Ford tie. His suit was bespoke a deep charcoal wool that cost more than most people's cars. Every detail of his appearance was meticulously curated, a testament to the control he exerted over every facet of his life. He checked his reflection in the dark mirror of a lacquered wall panel. The man staring back was the picture of success. Sharp jaw, intense blue eyes, a subtle tan from a recent business retreat in the Grenadines. He was the founder of Quantum Leap Capital, a hedge fund that used predictive AI to play the markets, making him a billionaire before his 35th birthday. He was a titan, a king in his castle. And tonight, he was a liar. He moved silently through the great room, a space so large and minimalist it felt more like a modern art gallery than a home. A single sprawling white sofa faced the windows, and on the wall hung a massive Gerhard Richter painting, an abstract blur of color that had been Doris's choice. Everything in the penthouse was a joint decision, at least on the surface. But Ethan had paid for it all, a fact that lingered unspoken in the air, a constant reminder of the power imbalance. He pushed open the bedroom door a fraction of an inch. Doris was a still form under the fret linens, her silhouette softly rounded by the 8 months of her pregnancy. A gentle moonlight filtered through the sheer curtains, illuminated her face. Even in sleep, she was beautiful with a classic, serene elegance that had first captivated him. She was the perfect wife for a man of his stature, intelligent, graceful, from a good family. She was the mother of his heir, his son. He felt a pang of something he might have once called guilt. It was a dull, vestigial ache, easily dismissed. He told himself this was for the best. Doris was fragile in her current state. She needed rest, tranquility. The stress of his life, the real stress, was his burden to bear alone, including the stress of Zoe. He closed the door with a soft click. His alibi was solid, practiced. A last-minute dinner with Japanese investors at Masa. It was exclusive, difficult to get into, and notoriously phone-free, making him plausibly unreachable for a few hours. He'd even had his assistant, a ruthlessly efficient woman named Miss Albright, make a real reservation, and then cancel it at the last possible moment, creating a digital footprint if Doris or anyone else ever thought to check. Control. It was all about control. He picked up his phone from the travertine console table. A single unread message waited for him. Zoe. Counting the minutes. Don't be late. X. A slow smile spread across Ethan's face. This was the thrill, the tightrope walk between two worlds. The pristine, orderly world of Doris and the raw, passionate world of Zoe. He loved Doris, of course. He loved her like he loved the penthouse, the company, the reputation. She was an essential part of the architecture of his life. But Zoe was different. She was a spark in the dark, a vibrant, chaotic flame that made him feel alive in a way that stock tickers and board meetings never could. He sent a quick reply. "Ethan, on my way. The night is yours." He slipped his phone into his pocket, grabbed his car keys, the sleek black fob for his Aston Martin DB11, and headed for the private elevator. As the doors slid shut, sealing him in a small descending box of steel and silence, he shed the persona of Ethan Vanderbilt, devoted husband. The king was leaving his castle. Not for business, but for pleasure. A pleasure so secret, so dangerous, it could bring his entire gilded world crashing down. Meanwhile, 2 floors below in a guest suite that was larger than most New York apartments, Leo Petrov was staring at his own phone, but his screen showed a far bleaker reality. A string of angry red notifications from his bank, an overdraft notice, a credit card payment declined. He ran a hand through his already messy brown hair, his stomach churning with a familiar acidic anxiety. Leo was Doris's younger brother. He had his sister's kind eyes, but none of her poise. Where Doris was calm, water, Leo was a choppy sea, constantly roiled by bad decisions and worse luck. A failed startup, a mountain of debt, and a desperate hope that his brother-in-law's Midas touch might somehow rub off on him. Ethan had given him this suite to use whenever he was in the city, a gesture that was equal parts generosity and condescension. He'd also given Leo a keycard with access to their floor in case of emergency. He'd come to see Doris, bringing her a ludicrously expensive brand of pickles she'd been craving. They had spent the afternoon talking, laughing. He loved his sister fiercely, and the sight of her so happy and pregnant filled him with both joy and a profound sense of his own failure. She lived in the sky, insulated from the world by Ethan's immense wealth, while he was drowning on the ground. When Ethan had come in to say goodbye, Leo had felt the usual mix of awe and resentment. The man was so polished, so effortlessly in command. He'd clapped Leo on the shoulder, his grip firm, his smile perfect. "Keep an eye on her for me, Leo. These Japanese investors are tough negotiators. It's going to be a long night." Leo had nodded, playing his part. "Of course, Ethan. Good luck." But something had felt off, a flicker in Ethan's eyes, a tension in his smile that didn't quite reach them. It was a look Leo, a man well acquainted with his own lies, recognized instantly. It was the look of a man hiding something. He'd dismissed it at first. Ethan was a billionaire. His life was a constellation of secrets and high-stakes deals. But the feeling lingered. Now, sitting alone with the evidence of his financial ruin glowing on his phone screen, a sour seed of suspicion began to sprout in his mind. He thought about the way Ethan never really looked at Doris when he was lying. He looked at a point just past her shoulder. He'd done it tonight. On a whim, driven by a cocktail of boredom envy and a brother's protective instinct, Leo opened the Car Finder app Ethan had once insisted he install on his phone so he could borrow the Range Rover sometime. Ethan had 5 cars, all linked to the account. Leo rarely used it, but he never deleted it. He scrolled through the list: the Range Rover, the Porsche, the vintage Ferrari, and the Aston Martin DB11. He tapped on the Aston Martin. A map of Manhattan filled his screen. A small pulsating dot showed the car's current location. It was moving, heading downtown along the West Side Highway. Leo watched it, his heart starting to beat a little faster. He knew where Massa was, in the Time Warner Center at Columbus Circle. Ethan was going in the wrong direction. The dot wasn't heading for Midtown. It was heading for Tribeca. Leo's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't a business dinner. He stood up, his mind racing. What was he doing? This was insane. It was none of his business. He should just go to bed. Forget he saw anything. But the image of his pregnant sister sleeping peacefully upstairs flashed in his mind. She trusted Ethan completely. She was vulnerable. And then another thought, a darker, more opportunistic one, slithered in. Information was a form of currency, and a man like Ethan Vanderbilt, a man with everything to lose, would surely pay a high price to keep a secret. This could be the solution to all his problems. His hands shaking slightly, Leo grabbed his jacket. He still had the key card. He could take the service elevator down without being seen. He knew what he had to do. He was going to follow that pulsating dot. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over the camera icon. He didn't know what he would find, but he knew one thing for sure. He had to get proof. The Aston Martin slid to a silent stop, not outside a glittering restaurant, but in the discreet underground garage of a pre-war industrial building on a quiet, cobblestoned street in Tribeca. The building, a former spice warehouse, had been converted into ultra-exclusive residential lofts, but its ground floor and mezzanine were now home to The Sanctuary, a private members-only club so secret it didn't even have a sign. Its members were a curated list of finance sharks, tech moguls, and discreet celebrities, people who valued privacy above all else. Ethan owned a stake in it. He handed his keys to the valet, who greeted him with a deferential nod. "Good evening, Mr. Vanderbilt." "Miguel, all is prepared?" Ethan asked, his tone crisp. "As you requested, sir. The Chanteuse suite is yours for the night. The catering is set up, and the trio is warming up." "Excellent." Ethan bypassed the main club lounge, taking a private elevator directly to the mezzanine. The doors opened into the Chanteuse suite, a sprawling, decadent space designed to look like a 1930s Parisian jazz club. Low lighting glinted off dark wood plush velvet banquettes lined the walls, and a small stage with a grand piano sat at the far end of the room. A dozen or so people were already there, a mix of men from Ethan's inner circle traders and lawyers who knew how to keep their mouths shut, and a few of Zoe's friends from the music scene. The air smelled of expensive perfume and Dom Perignon. And there, standing by the piano, was Zoe Reed. She was everything Doris was not. Where Doris was serene and cool, Zoe was a blaze of fiery energy. Her red hair was cut in a sharp, modern bob, and she wore a shimmering, backless emerald green dress that clung to her slender frame. A constellation of tattoos snaked up one arm. When she saw Ethan, her face lit up with a smile that was pure, unadulterated joy. She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around his neck, kissing him deeply. It wasn't a polite peck. It was a hungry, possessive kiss that staked a claim. "You came," she whispered against his lips. "I told you I would." He murmured, his hands finding the bare skin of her back. "Happy birthday." For the next 2 hours, Ethan was a different man. The controlled, calculating CEO was gone, replaced by a relaxed, laughing lover. He mingled with the guests, a glass of champagne, always in his hand, but his eyes never strayed far from Zoe. He listened intently as she talked about her music, her dreams of cutting an album, her frustrations with small-time gigs. With her, he wasn't a provider of security. He was a patron of the arts, a connoisseur of passion. The jazz trio began to play a sultry, slow number. Zoe, at the urging of her friends, took the stage. The pianist slid over, giving her the bench. Her fingers danced over the keys, and then she began to sing. Her voice was smoky and soulful, filled with a raw, aching beauty. She sang a classic torch song about love and loss, but her eyes were locked on Ethan's, and she changed a single line, making it about a secret love, a stolen moment in the night. The room fell silent, captivated. In that moment, she wasn't just a mistress. She was an artist, and Ethan was her muse. He felt a surge of pride and possession. This was his discovery. This vibrant, talented creature was his secret. After the song, a waiter brought out a small, elegant birthday cake lit with a single candle. Everyone sang. Zoe closed her eyes, made a wish, and blew. As she cut the first slice, Ethan stepped forward with a velvet box. "I have something for you," he said, his voice low enough for only her to hear amidst the applause. She opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of black silk, was a necklace. It wasn't a simple strand of diamonds. It was a vintage Cartier piece from the 1920s, an intricate Art Deco design of platinum and sapphires, with a single, perfect teardrop diamond at its center. It was exquisite, a museum-quality piece. But it was more than that. It was shaped like a stylized microphone. Zoe gasped, her eyes welling with tears. It was the most thoughtful, most personal gift he had ever given her. It showed that he saw her, that he listened. "Ethan," she breathed, speechless. "Let me," he said, taking the necklace from the box. He stepped behind her, his fingers brushing the nape of her neck as he fastened the clasp. He leaned in his lips close to her ear. "It's for the 9-you headline at the Blue Note." He kissed her neck, a lingering, intimate gesture. In the warm, dim light of the Chanteuse suite, surrounded by his hand-picked audience, Ethan Vanderbilt felt untouchable. He had his perfect wife waiting for him in his perfect penthouse, and he had his passionate muse here in his arms. He had successfully compartmentalized his life, mastering both worlds. He was winning. Outside, huddled in the darkened doorway of a closed art gallery, across the street, Leo Petrov was shivering, but not from the cold. He had followed the Aston Martin signal to this anonymous-looking building, watching as Ethan disappeared inside. For a while, nothing happened. He almost gave up, feeling like a fool, a paranoid idiot chasing shadows. Then through the large, uncurtained second-floor window, he saw them. The angle was difficult. He had to press himself against the cold brick of the building opposite, zooming in with his phone's camera as far as it would go. The footage was grainy, unsteady, partially obscured by the window frame. But it was undeniable. He saw the party. He saw Ethan laughing, drinking. And he saw the woman in the green dress. He filmed as she wrapped her arms around Ethan as they kissed. His own stomach twisted with a sickening lurch. This wasn't just some casual fling. The way they looked at each other, it was intimate. He kept recording, his hand trembling so badly he had to brace his arm against the wall. He captured snippets of the scene, Ethan toasting the woman, the jazz trio playing the whole decadent tableau. He felt a surge of white-hot rage on behalf of his sister. She was at home, carrying this man's child, her body changing her life, revolving around the baby they were supposed to be welcoming into their perfect family. And he was here living a completely different life. Then came the moment that turned his blood to ice. He watched as the woman, Zoe, he heard someone shout, sang at the piano. He saw the way Ethan looked at her, a look of adoration and pride that Leo had only ever seen him give Doris in public. He filmed the birthday cake, the single candle, and then he zoomed in his shaky camera, fighting to focus, as Ethan presented the velvet box. He couldn't make out the necklace clearly, but he saw the woman's ecstatic reaction. He saw Ethan fasten it around her neck, and then he saw the final damning act, the slow, lingering kiss on her neck, an act of such possessive intimacy, it felt like a physical blow, even from across the street. Leo stopped recording. He slumped back into the shadows of the doorway, his breathing ragged. He looked at the video he had just taken. It was just over 4 minutes long. Shaky pixelated the audio muffled. But it was enough. It was a digital bomb. His initial greedy thought of blackmail evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard fury. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about justice for Doris. But as he stood there in the dark, the enormity of what he had just done began to sink in. This video could destroy everything. It would shatter his sister's heart. It would detonate the Vanderbilt family. The fallout would be immense, and he, Leo Petrov, was standing at ground zero holding the trigger. He looked back up at the window. The party was winding down. He saw Ethan give the woman one last, deep kiss before turning to leave. The show was over. The king was returning to his castle. Leo quickly backed away, melting into the dark side streets of Tribeca before the Aston Martin could emerge from the garage. He had the proof. Now came the impossible question. What in God's name was he going to do with it? Ethan returned to the penthouse just after 1 a.m. The scent of Zoe's perfume scrubbed from his skin by the harsh soap in the club's washroom. The taste of champagne replaced by a strong mint. He moved with practiced stealth, shedding his suit in the dressing room. Slipping into the silk pajamas Doris had bought him for his last birthday. He was the very picture of the dutiful husband home from a long and arduous business negotiation. He slid into bed beside her. She stirred, her breathing changing. "Ethan?" She murmured, her voice thick with sleep. "I'm here," he whispered, kissing her temple. "I'm sorry I'm so late." They drove a hard bargain. "Did you close the deal?" she asked, her eyes still closed. "We did," he lied smoothly. "It's a big win for the fund." He put his hand on her stomach, feeling the firm swell of her belly. Their son kicked a small, sudden thump against his palm. "He's awake." "He missed you," Doris said, a soft, sleepy smile on her face. She trusted him. Utterly. The thought sent another one of those dull, ignorable pangs through his chest. He pushed it down. He was protecting her. This was necessary. He closed his eyes, the image of Zoe in her green dress flashing behind his eyelids, and willed himself to sleep. The next morning, the facade of domestic bliss continued. Doris was arranging a bouquet of white peonies on the kitchen island when Leo arrived, his face pale and drawn. "Leo." "You're up early," Doris greeted him, her smile radiant. She looked rested, happy. It was like a knife in his gut. "Couldn't sleep," he mumbled, avoiding her eyes. He accepted the coffee she offered his hand, shaking slightly as he took the porcelain cup. Ethan emerged from his study, dressed in casual cashmere, looking fresh and powerful. "Morning, Leo. Recovering from your wild night out?" he joked, clapping him on the back. Leo flinched. The casual hypocrisy was suffocating. "Something like that," he said, his voice tight. "Tough night for me, too," Ethan said, pouring his own coffee. These Tokyo guys don't mess around. We were at it for hours. But he paused, giving Doris a meaningful look. It was worth it. Secured the new server infrastructure. Doris beamed at him. That's wonderful, darling. Leo couldn't take it. He had to get out of there. Liv, I was wondering if you wanted to grab a walk later, just us. He asked, forcing a smile. I'd love that, she said. He made his excuses and retreated to his suite, the 4-minute video on his phone, feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He watched it again and again, each viewing stoking his anger. The lie was so blatant, so complete. Ethan wasn't just cheating. He was performing a masterpiece of deceit, and Doris was his captive audience. Later that afternoon, he and Doris walked along the edge of Central Park. The late summer sun was warm, and the city hummed around them. You seem quiet today, Leo. Doris observed, linking her arm through his. Is everything okay? Your finances, are they all right? They're the usual disaster, he admitted. But that's not it. He took a deep breath. He had decided on a strategy. He wouldn't show her the video. Not yet. It was too brutal. He would plant a seed of doubt, see if it would grow on its own. I'm just worried about you, he began carefully. Me, why? She laughed. I've never been happier. I know. It's just... Ethan. He works so hard. These late nights, these last-minute trips. It's a lot of pressure. He thrives on it, Doris said, defending him instantly. You know what he's like. He's building an empire for us. For the baby. I know, Leo said, treading carefully. It's just that dinner last night at Masa. It's funny, my friend Jessica, her boss, was there last night too. She said it was a really quiet evening. Doris's pace slowed almost imperceptibly. What do you mean? Just that? Small crowd? She didn't mention seeing any big group of Japanese investors. Said it was mostly couples. Leo held his breath. It was a weak lie, a flimsy fabrication, but it was all he had. Doris removed her arm from his. Her expression hardened slightly. Well, Jessica's boss must have missed them. Masa is a big place, and Ethan was likely in a private room. You can't just assume something nefarious, Leo. It's insulting. I'm not assuming anything, he said, backpedaling. It was just a stray comment she made. Forget I said anything. But the seed was planted. He could see it in the slight furrow of her brow, the tightness around her mouth. Doris was no fool. She was an art curator by training. Her entire career had been built on observing details, on sensing authenticity, on spotting a fake. They walked the rest of the way in a strained silence. When Doris returned to the penthouse, the atmosphere felt different. The vast, quiet space no longer felt serene. It felt empty. The Richter painting, which she had always loved for its chaotic energy, now seemed to mock her with its indecipherable meaning. She found herself watching Ethan with a new, unwelcome filter of suspicion. His easy explanations, his casual affection. Did they seem practiced? Was the perfection of their life a masterful illusion he was curating just for her? She hated the thoughts. She felt disloyal, paranoid. It must be the pregnancy hormones, she told herself. It was Leo projecting his own chaotic life onto hers. But she couldn't shake the feeling. That evening, after Ethan had gone to his study to catch up on emails, Doris did something she had never done before. She went to his dressing room. She stood among the neat rows of expensive suits and color-coded shirts. It felt like a violation. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She went to the hamper where he had tossed his clothes from the night before. She picked up the charcoal suit jacket. It smelled of him, of his familiar, expensive cologne. Nothing. She reached into the pockets, an Amex receipt from the garage at the Sanctuary, a place she had heard him mention once, a private club downtown. Not near Masa. Not even close. Her breath hitched. It could be nothing. He could have gone for a drink after. It could be an old receipt. She checked the date. It was from last night. Then her fingers brushed against something else deep in the inside pocket. She pulled it out. It was a small, flimsy paper cocktail napkin. On it, written in what was clearly a woman's looping script, were the words, "You made this the best birthday ever. Yours, Z. Z." The letter hung in the air, a venomous black mark against the crisp white napkin. It was a tiny thing, a scrap of paper, but it was a crack, a fissure in the flawless marble of her life. And Doris stared at it, her mind reeling as she felt the first terrifying tremors of her world beginning to fall apart. She carefully folded the napkin and put it in her own pocket. She did not cry. Her shock was immediately replaced by a sudden, chilling clarity. Her breath became steady. Her hands stopped shaking. She walked out of the dressing room, her expression a mask of perfect calm. The curator had just spotted the forgery. Now she needed to know everything about its creation before she decided how to burn the gallery down. She went to the bedroom, picked up her phone, and sent a text to her brother. "Doris, I need to see you. Now. Don't tell Ethan. And bring your phone." Leo met Doris not in the sterile grandeur of the penthouse, but in the neutral territory of the building's deserted library on the 10th floor. It was a space designed for quiet contemplation, filled with leather armchairs and unread books. The air was heavy with silence. Doris was standing by the window, looking out at the less impressive view of the neighboring buildings. She didn't turn when he entered. "You were right to be suspicious," she said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. It was more terrifying than if she had been screaming. "Liv, what did you find?" Leo asked softly. She turned then, and he was taken aback by her composure. Her eyes were clear, her face a pale, determined mask. She was holding the cocktail napkin between her thumb and forefinger, as if it were contaminated evidence. She held it out for him to see. Leo read the looping script. "Z," he breathed. "The woman in the green dress. Her name is Zoe." They were celebrating her birthday. Doris's composure finally cracked just for a second. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. She wiped it away with an angry, swift gesture. "You saw them. He hesitated, the confession lodging in his throat. "I followed him, Liv. I'm so sorry. I had a bad feeling and I followed him." "Show me," she commanded. Her voice was steel. With trembling hands, Leo took out his phone. He didn't want to do this. He was about to shatter his sister's heart into 1,000,000 pieces. But she had asked. She needed to see. He pressed play. The shaky 4-minute video filled the screen. The muffled jazz music, the laughter, the woman in green. Doris watched motionless, her eyes locked on the tiny screen. She didn't flinch. She watched Ethan laugh. She watched him embrace Zoe. She watched Zoe sing to him. She watched him give her the necklace. And she watched him kiss her neck. When the video ended, she was silent for a full minute. Leo could hear his own heart pounding in the quiet room. He expected a breakdown, a torrent of sobs, a scream of anguish. He got none of that. Doris looked up from the phone, and her eyes were not filled with tears, but with a cold, hard fire he had never seen before. The vulnerable, pregnant wife was gone. In her place was someone else, someone calculating, someone dangerous. "Send that to me," she said. Her tone left no room for argument. "And then delete it from your phone, from everywhere. I want you to be the only other person who knows it exists, and I want you to tell no one. Am I clear?" "Liv, what are you going to do?" he asked, stunned by her reaction. "Are you going to confront him? Confront him." She let out a short, bitter laugh. Oh, Leo. That's what he would expect. Tears, accusations, a dramatic scene. It would give him all the power. He would apologize, grovel, tell me it was a mistake, that he was under pressure, that it meant nothing. He would use my pregnancy, our son, to manipulate me into forgiving him. And in a year or 5, he'd just be doing it again, only more carefully. No, we are not doing that. She began to pace the room, a new energy crackling around her. He thinks of me as a beautiful object he acquired, a piece for his collection, the perfect wife, an accessory to his perfect life. He thinks I am fragile. He is about to learn how wrong he is. She stopped and looked at her brother, her gaze sharp and analytical. "You are in debt, aren't you, deeply?" Leo was taken aback by the sudden shift. "What?" "Yes, but what does that have to do with anything?" "It has everything to do with it," she said. "Ethan's betrayal isn't just an emotional one. I would bet my life he's been careless. He's arrogant. He thinks he's untouchable. He probably used company funds to pay for that party, for that necklace, for her apartment." She tapped the cocktail napkin. "This is just the tip of the iceberg. Infidelity is messy, but financial malfeasance, that's a weapon." Leo stared at her, mesmerized. This was a side of his sister he never knew existed. The quiet art curator was thinking like a corporate raider. "Here is what is going to happen," Doris continued, her voice low and intense. "You are going to be my ally. Your debt is my problem now, and we will solve it. But in return, I need your absolute loyalty. We are going to launch a quiet investigation. I'm not just going to divorce him, Leo. I am going to dismantle him." The plan she laid out was audacious, ruthless, and brilliant. Phase 1 was information gathering. The next day, Doris called Hannah her closest friend, a sharp-witted lawyer who she trusted implicitly. She didn't tell Hannah everything, just that she had serious concerns about Ethan's financial integrity and needed a recommendation for the best and most discreet private investigator in New York City. The name she got was a man named Mr. Peterson, a former federal prosecutor known for his forensic accounting skills and his bulldog-like tenacity. Doris met with Peterson in a sterile, anonymous office in Midtown. She paid his exorbitant retainer from a private account her parents had set up for her years ago, her escape fund. Her mother had always called it, half-jokingly. She didn't give him the video, she simply gave him a starting point. The Sanctuary Club, a name, Zoe Reed, and a mission. "I want to know everything," she told him. "Apartment leases, credit card statements, gifts, travel. I want to know if a single dollar from Quantum Leap Capital or any of its subsidiaries has been used for anything other than legitimate business. Follow the money. Be invisible." Phase 2 was maintaining the facade. This was the hardest part. Doris returned to the penthouse and played her role. She smiled at Ethan, kissed him good morning, asked about his day. She discussed nursery colors and birthing plans. Every loving gesture was an act of strategic warfare. Every smile concealed a growing mountain of rage. It was the performance of a lifetime. Ethan cocooned in his arrogance, noticed only a slight change. He attributed her occasional distance to pregnancy mood swings. He even felt a little relieved. Her slight melancholy made him feel less guilty, as if it somehow balanced the scales of his own deceit. He had no idea he was living with an enemy combatant. Leo, meanwhile, became her operative. He used his non-threatening presence to gather intel inside the castle walls. He'd have casual conversations with the staff, Miguel the doorman, the housekeepers, the drivers. He'd ask innocent questions. Does Mr. Vanderbilt often go out late? Does he ever use the car service to go downtown? Piece by piece, a pattern emerged. A pattern of late nights, of cash withdrawals, of destinations in Tribeca, where Zoe, as Peterson, would soon confirm lived in a lavish apartment leased by a shell corporation. A shell corporation linked back to Quantum Leap Capital's miscellaneous marketing expenses account. Weeks turned into a month. Peterson's reports landed in a secret encrypted email account Doris had created. They were a devastating litany of betrayal. The apartment lease, a monthly stipend, a credit card paid off by the same Shell Corp, with charges from Bergdorf Goodman, flights to Paris and St. Bart's, a down payment on a grand piano. And the necklace Peterson had even traced the purchase through a contact at Cartier. It had been bought by Ethan personally, but the funds had been reimbursed to him from the same marketing account. He was using his company as a personal slush fund to finance his affair. It was more than immoral. It was illegal. It was fraud. Doris read each report with a cold, methodical calm. Each new piece of evidence was another nail in Ethan's coffin. She saved every document, every photograph, every bank statement to a secure, encrypted hard drive. One evening, as she and Ethan sat in the great room, the city lights twinkling below, he reached over and placed his hand on her belly. "I can't wait to meet him," he said, his voice filled with what sounded like genuine tenderness. "To teach him everything, to build a legacy for him." Doris looked at him, at this handsome, brilliant man who had built their life on a foundation of lies. She thought of the video of the napkin of the reams of financial data on her hard drive. She smiled a slow, dangerous smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, you will," she said softly. "You will give our son a legacy, more than you can possibly imagine." Ethan heard only the words, not the warning. He had no idea that the empire he was so proud of was about to be the price of his betrayal, and that his quiet, pregnant wife was holding the detonator. The final report from Mr. Peterson arrived on a crisp Tuesday in October. It was the keystone. Peterson had found the smoking gun, a series of emails between Ethan and the CFO of Quantum Leap, Richard Monroe, discussing the need to creatively categorize certain executive expenses to avoid board scrutiny, with specific references to line items that matched the dates and amounts of his biggest purchases for Zoe. It was a clear conspiracy to defraud the company's shareholders. Doris printed every page, the entire dossier, the video stills, the bank statements, the apartment lease, the credit card bills. The damning emails formed a thick, heavy stack on her desk. It was the story of a betrayal told in receipts and wire transfers. She chose the next morning for the confrontation. Ethan was at his most arrogant after a successful quarterly earnings call, and Quantum Leap had just posted record profits. He would be flying high, which would make the fall that much farther. She didn't choose the penthouse, their home. That was her territory now. She chose his. She texted him at 10 a.m. "Doris, I'm coming to your office. We need to talk. It's urgent." He called immediately, his voice a mix of concern and annoyance. "Doris, honey, is everything all right? Is it the baby I'm in back-to-back meetings?" "Cancel them," she said, her voice leaving no room for negotiation. "I'm 5 minutes away." She arrived at the gleaming monolithic skyscraper that housed Quantum Leap Capital. The lobby was a symphony of marble and steel designed to intimidate. The employees scurried past looking important and stressed. Doris, 9 months pregnant and radiating a terrifying calm, swept past the reception desk without stopping. Everyone knew who she was, the perfect wife of the great Ethan Vanderbilt. She walked into his corner office without knocking. It was a glass-walled palace in the sky, with an even more commanding view than their penthouse. Ethan was standing by the window, his phone pressed to his ear, barking orders. Richard Monroe, the CFO, was with him. "I have to call you back," Ethan said, hanging up the phone as he saw her. His face was a mask of worried concern. "Doris, what is it you should be resting?" "I'm fine, Ethan," she said, her voice echoing slightly in the large office. She looked at Richard Monroe. "Richard, thank you for your hard work this quarter. You can go now. My husband and I need to discuss a private matter." Monroe, a slick man with nervous eyes, looked at Ethan, who gave a slight nod. He scurried out, closing the heavy glass door behind him. Now they were alone. "All right, what's so urgent? It couldn't wait," Ethan asked, his patience clearly wearing thin. Doris didn't say a word. She walked to his massive, polished mahogany desk, the symbol of his power, and placed the thick dossier squarely in the middle of it. Ethan stared at the stack of papers. "What is this?" "This," Doris said, her voice as cold and sharp as broken glass, "is your other life. The one you thought I was too fragile, too stupid, or too in love to ever discover." He opened the file. The first page was a high-resolution still from Leo's video. Ethan and Zoe kissing. His face went white. He visibly deflated, the power draining out of him like air from a punctured lung. He sank into his leather chair, his hands trembling as he flipped through the pages. The napkin, the receipt from the sanctuary, the necklace purchase, the apartment lease in Tribeca, the credit card statements. "Doris, I can explain," he stammered. It was the exact response she had predicted. Weak. Pathetic. "Can you?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "Can you explain how you were negotiating with Japanese investors while you were throwing a birthday party for your mistress? Can you explain her? Her name is Zoe Reed. She's a jazz singer. She lives in a $20,000 a month apartment that you pay for. You give her a stipend. You bought her a vintage Cartier necklace. You took her to Paris." She recited the facts without emotion, like a prosecutor reading an indictment. "Liv, please," he begged, his eyes welling with tears. The great Ethan Vanderbilt was crying. "It was a mistake. A terrible mistake. I was under so much pressure. She meant nothing. I love you. I love our family." "Stop," Doris commanded, and the force in her voice made him flinch. "Do not insult my intelligence by telling me she meant nothing, and do not dare speak of love. You don't love me. You own me. Or you thought you did." She gestured to the last section of the dossier. "Now let's talk about the part that really matters. The emails between you and Richard Monroe. The creative categorization of funds. The shell corporation. The fraud." Ethan's head snapped up. The fear in his eyes was no longer just about losing his wife. It was the primal fear of total annihilation. How did you get those?" "It turns out that when you have unlimited resources, your resources to be precise, you can find out almost anything," she said coolly. You didn't just cheat on me, Ethan. You cheated your company, your shareholders, your board. You committed multiple felonies. She let that sink in. She watched the gears turning in his head, the calculation of his ruin, the SEC investigation, the shareholder lawsuits, the public disgrace, the prison time. "What do you want?" He finally whispered, his voice a hoarse rasp. "A divorce, half you can have it. You can have more than half. Just don't do this." Doris laughed. It was a sound devoid of any humor. "Half? You think this is about money? You think I'm going to take a settlement and quietly disappear after this humiliation? No." She leaned forward, placing her hands on his desk. She was the one in power now. This was her throne room. "Here is what is going to happen," she said, laying out her terms. "We will get a divorce, a quiet, amicable one, for public appearances. You will not contest a single thing. Second, you will sign over 60% of your personal shares in Quantum Leap Capital to a trust that I will be the sole trustee of, and our son will be the sole beneficiary. You will retain your title as CEO for now. But I, through the trust, will have the controlling interest. I will have a seat on the board. From now on, you will answer to me." Ethan stared at her aghast. "You want my company?" "No, Ethan," she corrected him. "I'm securing our son's legacy, the one you were so keen to build. You just won't be in charge of it anymore. You will work for your son, and you will work for me. And if you ever deviate, if you ever challenge me, this entire dossier goes to 2 places, simultaneously, the SEC and the front page of the Wall Street Journal." He was trapped, utterly and completely. He could fight her and lose everything, including his freedom. Or he could surrender his empire to the wife he betrayed and spend the rest of his life as a figurehead in his own company, a king deposed, living in a gilded cage of her making. He slumped in his chair, a broken man. "You've thought of everything." "I had a lot of quiet evenings at home to think," she said, her voice laced with ice. "The paperwork is being drawn up by my lawyer as we speak. It will be on your desk tomorrow. Sign it." She turned and walked out of the office, not looking back. She didn't need to. She had won. Epilogue. 6 months later. The spring sun streamed into a beautiful light-filled brownstone in the West Village. The space was smaller than the penthouse, but felt infinitely larger, filled with books, art that Doris truly loved, and the happy gurgles of a baby boy. Doris sat at her dining room table, which doubled as her desk, with her son Nicholas sleeping soundly in a bassinet beside her. She was on a conference call, not as a silent wife, but as the majority shareholder of Quantum Leap Capital. "No, Richard," she was saying, her voice firm and confident. "The proposed acquisition is too risky. The numbers don't hold up under scrutiny. Kill the deal." There was a moment of sputtering on the other end of the line from the CFO, but no real argument. Her vote was the only one that mattered. Leo came in from the kitchen with 2 cups of coffee. He was smiling, the old anxiety gone from his eyes. Doris had paid off his debts and given him a job managing her personal finances and the trust. He had found his purpose not in a failed startup, but in helping his sister protect her son's future. He looked at Doris, then at baby Nicholas, his face full of love and admiration. As for Ethan, he was still the CEO of Quantum Leap Capital, a ghost rattling around in his own machine. He lived alone in the cavernous penthouse, a monument to a life he had lost. He saw his son twice a month, under supervised visits. He had tried to contact Zoe after Doris left him, but she was gone. The apartment was empty, the number disconnected. She had been a casualty, a beautiful, vibrant spark extinguished by the blast wave of his downfall. Doris ended her call and looked over at her sleeping son. She had been betrayed in the most brutal way, but she had refused to be a victim. She had taken the pain, the heartbreak, and the humiliation, and forged them into a weapon, and then a shield. She had lost a husband, but had found herself a mother, a protector, a queen who had built her own throne on the ashes of her husband's empire. The view from here was better than any penthouse. It was the view of a future she controlled. Doris Vanderbilt's story is a chilling reminder that the most perfect facades can hide the most devastating secrets. But it's also a story of incredible strength. When faced with the ultimate betrayal, she didn't just crumble. She calculated. She didn't just cry. She conquered. She turned her pain into power and rewrote her own destiny and the destiny of the man who wronged her. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What would you do in a world of secrets and lies? How do you find the truth, and what do you do with it once you have it? Is justice about revenge, or is it about taking back control? Doris made her choice. What would yours be if this story captivated you? Please hit that like button to let us know. Share this video with someone who loves a story of drama and sweet revenge. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into a story you won't be able to forget. Thank you for watching.